This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Afghanistan's new government faces many challenges as it gets down to work. Local officials claim Ethiopia's Tigray rebels massacred 120 people over 2 days. And gunmen abduct 18 people in yet another attack in Nigeria's Kaduna State. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. And tonight, I'm alongside my colleague Uche, who has our business headlines. Uche.
Thank you, Richard. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. The U.S. urges Tunisia to speed up IMF talks in order to deal with its economic crisis. And Egypt plans to build a high-speed electric rail line that will link its Red Sea and the Mediterranean coasts. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you, Richard.
Thank you so much, Uche. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Thanks for joining us. Let's begin in Afghanistan, where the former Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has apologized to the Afghan people over his hasty exit from the country. Ghani fled the country last month as the Taliban entered Kabul. He has tweeted that the palace security urged him to leave to avoid the risk of street fighting. His apology comes as the Taliban announces a caretaker government with Mullah Hassan Akhund as acting prime minister. The Taliban's supreme leader, Hibatullah Akhund Zada, has made his first public statement since the takeover. He says the group will work hard to uphold Islamic rules and Sharia law. Senior diplomats from 6 countries neighboring Afghanistan, including China, have met virtually over the Taliban takeover. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi urged the acting Afghan government to keep its promise to gain international recognition. Let's take a listen.
We welcome the Taliban's positive attitude towards political construction, anti-terrorism, and relations with neighboring countries after entering Kabul. But the key is to put them into practice. There are 2 key points. First is to be inclusive, and second is to resolutely fight terrorism. We hope the Taliban can learn from the past, actively interact with all ethnic groups and factions under the interim government, keep its promises to the outside world, and become more recognized globally.
The Chinese foreign minister called on Afghanistan's neighbors to enhance cooperation to help the reconstruction of the war-torn country. He also called on the interim Afghan government to work with the other countries in the region to fight terrorism, as well as the production and trafficking of drugs. The foreign minister from Iran, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan were also in attendance. Some Americans are still stranded in Afghanistan. They say they felt abandoned during the U.S. troops' withdrawal.
Told us, go to a certain location, you will be picked up. And this is from the State Department. You will get picked up, go there. And it was in the middle of the road across the airport. So we went there, waited an extra 12 to 13 hours with no food, no water, nothing.
And I saw the young kids are sleeping and they have no clue what happened this morning, that the last flight is gone and we're left behind.
Well, joining us now from London is Chidi Wanu. He is an international defense and security expert. Chidi, welcome to Africa Live. The Taliban had promised to form an inclusive government. What is your take on the lineup announced on Tuesday?
Good evening, and thanks for having me on. I think the lineup reflects the kind of contradictions within the Taliban movement as it stands today. I mean, we look at the Taliban as most people look at the Taliban as a homogeneous movement, while in reality it's a coalitions of different militias and different groups. So you'll see reflected in that, they've got to touch, because the old, they've got Mullah Omar's son in there. You've got I think the biggest kind of takeaway is the presence of the Haqqanis, not just in key positions as Minister of Interior, but in also some of the minor positions, which shows that whilst the Taliban, there might be a pragmatic element of the Taliban who are more outward looking and have an understanding of what the world wants to see. They also have to balance their internal tensions and give the Haqqanis a much bigger kind of share of the pie than would be palatable to the rest of the world. So I think the key, how long this government lasts is key. Whether it's just a government, the first iteration of the Taliban government and others will follow, that we don't know. But so far, it looks kind of like a compromise between the hardliners and the pragmatists, with the hardliners getting a much bigger share of the pie.
Well, Chidi, some of the individuals named are on a U.S. wanted list as well as UN sanctions list. How does this affect the Taliban's quest for international recognition?
So that's going to be very problematic. And this is part of the issue is that they're having and trying to balance, their outward-facing, pragmatic, kind of image, as we've been seeing, coming out and giving press conferences, talking about how they want to respect the rights of women and etc. But at the same time, you've got having a big share of the portfolios and having a key ministry like the Ministry of Interior. That's going to make it very difficult for particularly the Western donors and the world institutions to kind of work with these governments. But also the Taliban can't.
All right, Chidi, let's leave it there. We apologize for that imperfect communication. Moving on, though, for more updates on that developing story, Zamaria Abbasin joins us from Kabul. Zamaria, welcome to Africa Live. The Taliban has named a caretaker government. What are the most pressing issues and the challenges for this new government? Zamaria.
Hello, Richard. Lots of challenges to the Taliban and the interim government, the take care government in Afghanistan formed, justifying because of the situation is looming in every aspect. The economic catastrophe, social challenges, international recognition, and also to handle the political vacuum that had been occurred in Afghanistan since last 1 month. And finally, this is the time that the Taliban got rule and their leadership have announced their interim government where there is a prime minister, 2 deputies, and also a cabinet of 33 individuals. All of them are the Taliban. Now they are facing the economic catastrophe and also controlling the public mind that there are waves of the protests in the country, whether the Taliban warn to stop protesting. Recently, just this evening, the Taliban published a statement and warning those who are protesting because of the Ministry of Interior Affairs of Taliban. This is not a correct time because of the security threats, and if somebody want in a specific and good time to protest, they should submit their demands with the Ministry of Justice, and they have to clarify the start and end times and also much more. So finally, at the moment, Taliban say no to any protest or rally in the country. Yet social challenges remain the same because there are much more criticism on the Taliban because they were emphasizing on the inclusive government. The inclusivity is now challenged and questioned. All of the members, as I said, or the Taliban, and there are other ethnics and parties that are now raising their voices in all around the country, and every day there are protests, and we would see if these protests and the waves will increase or the Taliban will be able to control whether they are warning. On the other hand, the communication and political stage with the region and international society. There was an agreement between Taliban and the U.S. It clearly say in 3 parts, many articles, that the Taliban will cut its relationship with Al-Qaeda and other extremist and terrorist groups. And from the U.S. side, it was told that they will withdraw all its forces. Now, the U.S. has fulfilled its commitment that they have withdrawn all their forces. All the foreign forces are now 0 in Afghanistan, according to all the possible reports we have. But from the Taliban side, the world is waiting, as U.S. President Joe Biden said, they are waiting for the actions of the Taliban, not the mere words. Also, region is focusing in the Afghanistan and other. So it's much more to say about Taliban, and it's a hard time. Yet they have gotten the power in Kabul, finally all over the country, just about 1 month, and finally they have formed their ministry just yesterday. So they will be doing, they are promising a lot of things, and yet people of Afghanistan and the world are waiting for their actions. Richard.
Samar, thank you for staying on top of that story. We appreciate that update and report. Now to the latest in Guinea, where soldiers seized power on Sunday. The coup leaders have moved to consolidate their authority by naming army governors, at the same time pledging to form a transitional government. Meanwhile, regional body ECOWAS has been holding a meeting on the situation in the West African country. For more on that, we are joined by Phil Ihaza, who is live in Abuja, Nigeria. Phil, thank you for joining us. Phil, what's the latest?
Well, thanks, Richard. Indeed, we've been painstakingly looking at, you know, the updates, looking at, you know, contacting people, you know, from inside to know how, you know, the meeting is going, because, I mean, one could understand that the reason this meeting has taken this long is because the ECOWAS body, before the meeting, actually said that they would seek to find a lasting solution to the crisis in Guinea. So it's not a usual meeting. It's called an extraordinary summit, a virtual summit of all the leaders of the bloc. So what we know is that they're going to try to ensure that they bring out terms, very, very clear and stiff terms, to try to release or force the hand of the coup plotters in Guinea to release unconditionally the president of Guinea, Alpha Conde. Also, we know that they'll be looking at ensuring that whatever comes out of the meeting will not be the same template that you know they provided in Mali, because if you recall, we're beginning to see some concerns in Mali, the fact that in spite of all that the ECOWAS threatened in terms of sanctions, it's not going as was expected, in the fact that we're still not getting a proper timeline in Mali as to the transitional government. So that may be one of the reasons why we're seeing delays of the communique from that meeting. But of course, it's something that will definitely come to the fore. Also, some observers and critics are saying that if the ECOWAS does not get this right, it might actually encourage other would-be coup plotters in other parts of Africa who may be contemplating such moves. And that's the reason why it's indeed a very, very important meeting, crucial one at this time. Also, observers are saying that beyond just sanctions, they'll need to send a delegation to Guinea immediately to try to speak or have a meeting with the coup plotters and see what they can actually salvage from the current situation, and of course ensure that democracy is restored and upheld in Guinea.
All right, Phil Ihaza with the very latest from Guinea. Much appreciated. Thank you for your insights. Now let's head over to Guinea, where the opposition leader Celo Delaine Diallo said he and his party are ready to participate in a political transition. Diallo is the longtime rival of deposed President Alpha Conde. The opposition leader said there was a need to establish a transition that would organize free and transparent elections. The 69-year-old Diallo was defeated by Conde in the 2020 election that was preceded by violence. Conde was ousted in a military coup on Sunday, and coup leaders have pledged to set up a transition government preceded by consultations.
Those who come into power want to take on a lot of missions, grand missions. But for me, the principal mission is to get the country out of this exceptional period. If our technical and financial partners have naturally condemned the coup, then the first mission for me is to help the country get out of this exceptional period by organizing free and fair elections so that we can put institutions back in place, credible and legitimate institutions, because they come from the will of the sovereign people.
The Economic Community of West African States has expressed concern over Mali's transitional government's commitment to democracy. According to ECOWAS, the government has not made substantial progress in ensuring elections take place in February 2022. The interim government was tasked to ensure elections were held at the end of an 18-month transition. It was set up in August 2020 after junta toppled the government of then-President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. The transitional government has been experiencing instability especially since the arrest of leader Richard Nta in May. Now, steered by Assimi Goïta, the leadership maintains that it is committed to meet the February deadline. However, some officials doubt elections will be held in good time. You're watching Africa Live. We'll see you on the other side of the break with more news stories. Don't go away. Here's what's ahead. Local officials claim Ethiopia's Tigray rebels massacred 120 people over 2 days. And gunmen abduct 18 people in yet another attack in Nigeria's Kaduna State.
The East China Sea, home of dream seekers, where China's hub for reform and opening up connects with the maritime Silk Road. Whether it's exploring the busiest seaport and trade zone, or witnessing how locals strive for a better life. Join CGTN's adventure, Tides of Change Part 2. A journey enchanted by a dynamic ocean and beyond.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
Tents here, bottles are being thrown. As they do so, we
there are
have
about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from the front
clear
line.
View of this front line position.
Rebel forces from Ethiopia's Tigray region killed 120 civilians over 2 days in the neighboring Amhara region, and that's according to local officials. The killings reportedly took place at a village about 10 kilometers from the city of Dabat on September the 1st and 2nd. The officials say women, children, and the elderly were among the dead. Tens of thousands of people have fled their homes in Amhara as forces from the Tigray People's Liberation Front advance. War broke out in November 2020 between Ethiopia's federal government and troops and forces loyal to the TPLF. Let's now cross to Gurum Chala in Addis Ababa for more on that story. Good to see you, Gurum. Tell us more about these killings and whether the TPLF leadership has commented on the accusations.
Richard, it's between September 1 and 2 that the reported killing of 120 civilians has taken place in the Amhara regional state by TPLF force. So far, the TPLF has said nothing specific about this allegations being made by the government, but it generally saying that it rejects such accusations and they are fabricated. But the report is still saying that the 120 people, women, children, elderly, amongst them, were killed in the area where TPLF had a chance to hold for 2 days, and mass graves were also uncovered after that. Now, TPLF also is accused of disrupting humanitarian services in the Amhara regional state, apart from the current killing report that has come out. It is very hard, Richard, by the way, to verify any of the information, whether it's from the TPLF or government side, as communication by and large remains cut off in the Tigray regional state and some neighboring areas in the Afar and Amhara regional states. But we can verify and know that the war has continued in the north, and the TPLF forces have entered the Amhara regional state in specific areas and also Afar regional state. The ENDF, the Ethiopian National Defense Force, is saying that it is now chasing them away from the places they have conquered. However, you should understand that the continuation of the war means that more killings will continue and that people will be evicted from their homes, making humanitarian aid very hard in that regional state, including Afar and, of course, Amhara regional state. So we do know that this is the ongoing situation, but more information is coming out. We will keep you updated.
All right, Gurum Chala, we asked you to cover a lot of ground. Thank you for bringing all of that there to light. Much appreciated. Let's now turn our attention now to Nigeria, where unknown gunmen have reportedly raided a village in Nigeria's northern state of Kaduna, kidnapping about 18 people, including children. Nigeria has been witnessing a wave of mass abductions, mostly occurring in the northern region. Our correspondent, Philly Haza, reports from Abuja.
Locals say the abductors attacked Kekebi village on the outskirts of Kaduna state capital in the wee hours of Monday night. The gunmen were riding on motorbikes and moved from house to house, taking children and their parents. A community leader confirmed the incident, saying the whereabouts of the victims remain unknown and the village is still traumatized by the attack. The police command in Kaduna is yet to comment on the matter. This is one of many attacks the country has witnessed recently. Since December last year, more than 1,000 students and scores of people across the northern states have been abducted. The Kaduna state government and other neighboring states, has imposed strict measures for transportation. Motorcycles have been banned in many parts of the state and movements at odd hours restricted. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has also ordered all the security chiefs to end kidnappings and other forms of insecurity across the country. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Turkey and Egypt held 2 days of discussions in Ankara. The political consultations were the second round of talks between the two countries, aiming to repair ties that were severed in 2013. CGTN's Mikhail Bardavid reports.
The talks were led by Turkish Deputy Foreign Minister Sedat Önal and his Egyptian counterpart Hamdi Sanat Loza. It was stated that the aim of the meeting was to advance and normalize relations on the basis of mutual benefit. Bilateral as well as regional issues were discussed, including the situation in Libya, Syria, Palestine, Iraq, and the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, Turkey had expressed eagerness to cooperate with Egypt on maritime issues in the Eastern Mediterranean, and experts have stressed that a potential maritime agreement could pave the way for better ties.
Dealing with the political issues, they begin with the non-political issues like energy, so they cooperate in the energy area. It's a kind of win-win solution for both countries. This will become a kind of accelerator or motivator in normalization of the relations.
Following the talks, the two sides released a joint statement which stressed that the parties agreed to continue these consultations in order to make progress in areas under discussion, as well as the need for further steps to facilitate normalization of their relations. I'm Michal Bardavid for CGTN in Antalya.
The Libyan Presidency Council has begun national reconciliation efforts that will see numerous domestic talks taking place. The launch of these efforts this week has seen the release of al-Sadi Muammar Gaddafi, released from prison. He's the son of former Libyan president, and here is Adel Al-Marroui with more on that story.
Since its inception in March, Libya's Presidential Council's prime task has been to push for a national reconciliation. It has since led months of talks between all factions to understand what will it take for Libyans to drop their guns. This week, the Council took the first tangible step in the process. It convinced Tripoli to release some high-profile politicians who have wide support in eastern Libya.
The Presidential Council is working on releasing all the prisoners who were found not guilty and they are still in prisons. This is the basis of the basics of the national reconciliation process that we are working on, and that's why in this time we decided to again announce the beginning of the national reconciliation process. It's not working on excluding any party, even though majority of the released prisoners are leaders in former regime.
The list of released prisoners includes al-Sadi Gaddafi, one of the late President Muammar Gaddafi's sons. Colonel Ahmad Ramadan, Gaddafi's personal secretary, was also released, along with 6 other former officials. Analysts believe the move could help in healing the scars of the civil war and help Libya move forward.
During the past 10 years, the Libyan social fabric tore apart. Cities reviled each other, tribes did the same, even within the same region or the same family division spread. We need reconciliation, and Libyans want that achieved before the elections. The Presidency Council applied the law. They released all those who shouldn't be in jail but remain there for political reasons. Some have been in detention for 10 years without any accusations.
This is just the first step in a long road ahead for Libya's reconciliation. With a few months remaining to the December elections, Mohammed al-Menaffi, the president of the Presidential Council, established the High Commission for National Reconciliation. The body aims to expand and speed up efforts that would help to socially reunite Libyans. The Libyan Presidency Council says more people will be released. This week's group were detained in western Libyan prisons, which the Council and the unity government have authority over. Next, the Libyan National Army and authorities in eastern Libya are expected to meet this display of goodwill by releasing some of their prisoners. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Parliamentary elections have been underway in Morocco in a bid to improve turnout this year. The vote was held on the same day as municipal and regional elections, which usually have higher participation. The poll was held under new rules that were expected to make it much harder for the moderate Islamist PJD to remain as the biggest party. Morocco is a constitutional monarchy where the king holds sweeping powers. The king picks the prime minister from the party that wins the most seats in parliament and appoints key ministers. This includes the posts for education, health, employment, and social welfare. Moroccans hope elected officials will work for the people and build the nation.
I aspire for the elected politicians to serve the nation so it develops and flourishes. We are looking for a better government than the previous one. To be honest, I am not convinced of the previous government's work, and I want the next government to serve our nation and save the people.
The Democratic Republic of Congo has declared an outbreak of meningitis in the northeastern Chopo province. The viral disease has killed 129 people out of the 267 who have been infected since the first case was discovered in June. The Health Ministry has deployed an initial emergency team to the area, and they are supported by the World Health Organization. Chopo province lies in the African meningitis belt, which runs across the continent from Senegal to Ethiopia. Meningitis is transmitted by kissing, sneezing, or coughing on someone, or living in close quarters with an infected person. And back to Nigeria now. The government has said it is rolling out the second phase of COVID-19 inoculations. So far, only 2% of the Nigerian population has been vaccinated. The Nigerian Primary Healthcare Development Agency, together with officials from the World Health Organization, have urged Nigerians to take the jab. So far, the country has ordered over 39 million doses, and that includes a new batch of 1.2 million doses of Johnson & Johnson from the COVAX facility delivered on the 4th of September. Nigeria is also marking International Literacy Day as it seeks to strengthen action to achieve the goal of a more literate society. Our correspondent Tessa McKenday reports.
35-year-old Margaret Thompson is a homemaker who cannot read or write. She recently enrolled in an adult education class, having left school about 30 years ago.
I've enrolled for these classes with the hope that someday I will reap some benefits that come with being educated.
Nigeria's Ministry of Education says an estimated 60 million Nigerians, that's about 30% of the country's population, cannot read or write. An advocacy group helping to educate illiterate people, especially women in Nigeria's Plateau State, says there are many different reasons.
One major cause of illiteracy in Nigeria is poverty, because I believe if the economy is good and everybody is well-to-do, everyone would like to be educated and also be a literate person in the society. But if you look at our country today, a lot of things are going wrong everywhere. Poverty, number one. Number two, a lot of insecurity. Even when they have the means of going to school, at times the security challenges hinders a lot of them from going to school.
The United Nations says COVID-19 has also magnified the pre-existing inequalities in access to meaningful literacy learning opportunities. But experts say overcoming illiteracy is possible if citizens seek education. This center has been committed to educating women and girls for the past 5 years. The tutors here say the establishment of more education centers like this could help reduce illiteracy in the country. And the government says it is working towards educating more citizens and establishing more centers, especially for women.
We have others in various places such as Barkladi, Bassa local government, Mangu, etc., who are there to train women, who are there to educate women, because they discover that women are left behind.
Margaret, meanwhile, is putting her head down and plans to be reading and writing soon. Tessim Akinde, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
The news continues on Africa Live. Time now for our business segment with Uche. Uche.
Thanks, Richard. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. The U.S. urges Tunisia to speed up IMF talks in order to deal with its economic crisis. And Egypt plans to build a high-speed electric rail line that will link its Red Sea and the Mediterranean coasts.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 48 hours of rain.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, the U.S. has called on Tunisia to conclude negotiations with the International Monetary Fund in order to address the economic crisis that has been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. This comes after ratings agency Moody's raised concerns about the impact of political instability on those IMF negotiations. Here's CGTN's Adnan Shaushi with the details.
Tunisia's central bank governor has expressed optimism that an agreement with the International Monetary Fund will be reached soon to unlock much-needed funds to stabilize its economy. Economists assert that Tunisia needs to set up a new financing program with the IMF in order to restore the confidence of donors as well as foreign investors in the North African country's economy.
Tunisia is under pressure to finalize negotiations with the IMF before the end of this year. The problem is that Tunisia needs IMF financing for the 2021 supplementary state budget. If Tunisia does not implement its urgent economic and social reforms, even international donors and financial institutions will hesitate before financing the country's various projects and its economy.
The New York-based credit rating agency Moody's Investor Service concluded that the political crisis in Tunisia would further disrupt negotiations with the IMF on a new multi-year program. The agency deems it unlikely that the IMF will subscribe to a new program without a credible endorsement of a comprehensive reform package.
Tunisia needs political stability and interlocutors with the IMF, according to Moody's and other agencies. The IMF says Tunisia needs a social pact with labor unions to implement the main reforms: the high operation cost for state-owned companies, the public debt, the compensation fund, and the reduction of the high public sector wage bill.
Moody's issue a comment was published after Tunisia's President Kais Saied dismissed Prime Minister Hisham al-Shishi and suspended Parliament on July 25th. The head of state informed the U.S. congressional delegation last week that he took exceptional measures in full compliance with the Constitution.
I want to make it clear about the situation in Tunisia. They speak about the so-called coup, but they ignore and distort the law. A coup only happens when it's done without constitutional legitimacy. Whilst I use the constitutional text to preserve the Tunisian state from an imminent danger.
During his meeting with the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Treasury for Africa and the MENA region, Eric Mayer, the Tunisian Apex Bank governor declared that he is currently working with all domestic stakeholders to devise an economic rescue plan. President Kais Saied has called on Tunisia's international partners to support it in its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The head of state said the acceleration of the vaccination drive is a top priority in order to resume normal economic activity. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And heading to Egypt now, the country has signed a $4.5 billion deal for a high-speed electric rail line that will link its Red Sea and the Mediterranean coasts. Now, the contract between Egypt's National Authority for Tunnels and a consortium including Siemens Mobility, Orascom Construction and Arab contractors will cover design, installation and maintenance of the rail link over about 15 years. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with more from Cairo.
The $4.5 billion high-speed train is a 660-kilometer distance from Ain Sokhna port on the Red Sea, going through major cities like Cairo, the new capital, and Alamein to connect the northwestern coast of Egypt. The rail line is expected to carry about 30 million passengers per year. The high-speed train is going to be linked to Egypt's first monorail and the first electric train, and together they will form what is dubbed by experts as the new Suez Canal on rail. Ahmed Nabil, who is a consultant for a number of contractors working on the project, says it has several similarities to the Suez Canal.
We are talking about a dream, Suez Canal on rails, because you don't need to cross the Suez Canal by sea. You can load and unload shipments in rest seaports of Ain Sokhna and go straight to the Mediterranean seaports by train. This will remap global transport and will attract new types of goods and products that prefer land routes rather than sea routes.
The project is to be built and maintained by a consortium of Germany's Siemens in conjunction with Egypt's Orascom and Arab contractors. But this line is only the first leg of a grand $23 billion high-speed railway project that runs 1.8 thousand kilometers around the country. The passenger train's speed will be 250 kilometers per hour, while the freight train is 120 kilometers per hour. That's double the speed of the current trains operating in Egypt.
It will save a lot of time. To travel to Sokhna to Alamein is usually a 5-hour drive. This train will only take 1.5 hours. The second stage from the 6th of October in the city of Giza to Aswan, Upper Egypt, will save 9 hours from the trip. Everyone knows the positive impact this has on the GDP and the benefits on the citizens and investments. You are bringing Egypt's north and south closer together, providing safe and fast means of transport to foster and ease in establishing businesses and investments in these regions.
The high-speed train is part of the government's 5-year plan to rebuild the North African country's rundown railway system and prevent recurring accidents in this vital sector. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And And Nigeria's state oil company is considering an initial share sale. That's after posting its first profit in its 44-year existence. Now, the plan follows legislation signed recently by President Muhammadu Buhari. It enables the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation to offer shares to the public. Here's CGTN's Deji Bademosi with more on that story.
The announcement over the likely listing of the NNPC shares in the future did not come as a surprise. A clause in the petroleum industry bill, which the president signed into law recently, provides for the public listing of the shares of the corporation. No timeline has yet been fixed for the IPO, but analysts are upbeat about the move and its likely impact.
Simply going public is more transparency, more openness on the part of NNPC. So overall, that aids corporate governance, and that basically would drive the, should I say, best practices in that corporation. So net positive for them to go profit. I think the PIB says it's a liability company right now. Then they have to go public also in about a year or 6 months. So I would say good.
The NNPC had for long been widely considered as a non-transparent corporation in the way it operates and never declared a profit in its 44 years of existence until recently, when it reported a net income of $698 million for 2020. At the Nigerian Stock Exchange, brokers are eagerly anticipating the listing of the corporation's shares. Many are optimistic it will do well and deepen the market.
It's going to be a very positive one for the market, for the capital market, for the Nigerian capital markets, because it's going to bring a lot of, it's going to increase the level of transaction we'll be having going forward. It's going to attract both local and foreign investors to the markets. Because if you take your mind back to Aramco, when it was listed on Saudi exchange, we saw the kind of attraction that listing was able to bring to, they were able to generate a lot of income to the government, and also it brings a lot of traction to their market. So the same thing, that if NNPC is eventually listed as anticipated by the new PIA bill, we believe is going to increase the level of activities in the capital market.
Many Nigerian investors are eagerly waiting for the listing of the NNPC shares on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, not bothered by the fact that the corporation was a loss-making venture for over 4 decades. Everyone seems to agree and believe that by going public, the NNPC will become the cash cow it was originally designed to be. Deji Badimasi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And let's turn our attention to the Middle East now. As the Taliban forms its new government, those with commercial ties to Afghanistan are now waiting to see what the new political and economic landscape will look like. Well, key exporters will be looking to maintain their market share in Afghanistan, while new players are eyeing an entry into the huge untapped mineral and industrial potential of the country. Here's CGTN's Ihsan Kevani analyzing the prospects for neighboring Iran.
As Taliban rule becomes a reality in Afghanistan, attention is slowly turning to the country's economic and political future under a group with a questionable reputation globally. The Taliban, whose main revenue has come from the cultivation and export of poppies and narcotics, is trying to convince the world it has changed and strives for close political and commercial ties with all countries. But what about neighboring Iran? Afghanistan has always been one of its main export markets. Over the past few decades, many Iranian manufacturers have been relying on their eastern neighbor, as Western sanctions severely limited who they could sell to. In 2020, Iran exported over $1.7 billion worth of goods to Afghanistan, mainly construction materials. Considering the Taliban's traditional ways of handling monetary and budgetary systems, the Taliban can also squeeze taxes from the vast money transfer system that serves as Afghanistan's de facto banking system. Foreign trade is at risk, as nobody knows what will happen to import tariffs and commercial regulations.
Due to recent developments in Afghanistan and because of insecurities which threaten merchandise, export of some commodities have dropped. We've witnessed a total of 50% decrease in our export volume. We hope commercial ties resume after the new government is established in Afghanistan, because Iranian goods are popular in that country.
Optimists will hope the Taliban is true to its word that the new rulers will look to advance Afghanistan's post-war reconstruction effort. Huge quantities of building materials will be needed to be sourced in the region to develop infrastructure and get the economy moving, and international companies will also be looking to tap into Afghanistan's mineral wealth. Since late March, the beginning of the new Persian year, Iranian businesses have exported more than 5 million tons of goods, including structural steel, tiles and ceramics, detergents, and foodstuff to Afghanistan.
Iran seems ready to jump on any sign of security and stability in Afghanistan. With its low labor costs, high quality and diverse workforce, and reasonable transportation costs, Iran's manufacturing sector will feel it's better placed than most countries to take advantage. Ehsan Kayvani, CGTN, Yazd, Iran.
And in Russia, Moscow hosted the annual Autoculture Festival recently. Lovers of rare and expensive cars gathered there to showcase the best of their collections. Let's take a look.
In the midst of stone statues and manicured lawns of historical estates some 20 kilometers west of Moscow, rare vehicles are on full display. The annual Autoculture Festival has something for everyone: classics, motorsport legends, SUVs and rare young-timers, ultra-expensive cars, and spectacular sports cars usually hidden in private collections and restoration workshops.
In Russia, there has never been a cult of the car, so there was no auto culture as such, and we are now trying to change that and create at this stage some kind of automobile culture, automobile movement, to make it more of a mass kind of thing.
This is only the festival's third year, but it is rapidly gaining momentum. The last Autoculture Festival featured around 80 cars, but this year boasts more than 250 participants. By bringing together rare car collectors and general enthusiasts from across the country, the festival aims to nurture the growth of Russia's automotive culture. Wang Dong, CGTN.
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, Nigeria's trade deficit hits a record $14 billion in the first half of this year. Of course, more on that coming up at top of the hour. For now, back to Richard.
Thank you so much, Uche. We are not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Here's a look at what's ahead. Tanzanian boxer Hassan Wakinyo retains his African Boxing Union